The answer for that one should be B. The answer on this one should be A. The answer on this one is B. Answer on this one is A. Pick a number from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. The winning numbers today are 2, 4, 8, 12, and 18. Homework check. This was from Friday, 4/12. 6 out of 15, that would be the same as 2 out of 5, which is 40%. Here are the homework answers. Check what you have. Number 1 is square root of 6 over 4. 2 is 5 square root of 3 over 18. 3 is 5 square root of 5 over 2. 4 is 9 over 14. 5 is square root of 3 over 2. 6 is 5 square root of 30 over 24. 7 is 3. 8 is 3 square root of 3. 9 is 3 square root of 6 over 8. 10 is 4 square root of 6 over 9. 11 is 13 square root of 5 over 25. 12 is 14. 13 is 11 square root of 15 over 6. 14 is 9 square root of 10 over 20. And 15 is 5 square root of 2 over 6. To simplify radical expressions, here's a quick review before you do what we have to do today for example 1 and 2. The difference of two squares is something that we've already had a test over. Here's a review over it. A plus B and A minus B. That's a difference of two squares. That means you square this one and put a minus sign in between the two. In reality, it's really A times A times the minus B, B times A, and then B times the minus B. But in the middle you have a negative AB and a plus AB. They cancel out. So that's why it just ends up being A squared minus B squared. If I had x plus 2 and x minus 2, I would square this one to get x squared and square that one to get 4 and put a minus sign in between the two. So x squared minus 4. What would this one be?
X squared minus 16.
X squared minus 16, because you square that one and you square this one and put a minus sign in between the two. What would this one be? It would be x squared minus 100. We're squaring this and this, put a minus sign in between the two. This only works when you have the same quantity except for the signs. Now, what would I have if it were 3 plus square root of 2 and 3 minus square root of 2? If I squared this one, what do I get?
9.
If I square this, what is it?
1, 2.
It would be 2. Remember, it's this times this. If you square a square root, you get the number underneath the sign. And then you put a minus sign in between the two. The answer would be 7. 9 minus 2, then it comes out to be 7. That's from doing this squared, this squared. If you square a square root, it's just the number under the sign. If I had this one, what's 7 squared?
49.
And what is this squared?
3.
What sign in the middle?
Minus.
What's the answer?
46.
46. 49 minus 3, that came from this squared, put a minus sign between the two, and you end up with 46. What is this squared?
54.
And this squared?
6.
Minus 6.
What's the answer?
58.
58. Remember, that came from this squared, you put a minus sign between the two, and you get a 58. Alright, here's example 1. The problem is 4 over 2 minus the square root of 2. And you have to do the same thing here as you did last week. Your goal is to get rid of the square root in the denominator. Last week you just multiplied the top and the bottom by the square root of 2, if that's were the case. But this time you can't do that because you have this in here. And since you have a minus or even a plus sometimes, you can't just multiply by the square root of 2. It won't eliminate it. What you have to do in this case is multiply the top and the bottom by the same quantity but the different sign. So the top and the bottom by 2 plus the square root of 2. We're using the opposite sign from the bottom. Now when you go to multiply straight across on the top, you're going to distribute the 4 to each of these items. So you have 4 times 2. That would be 8. And then 4 times square root of 2 is just 4 square root of 2. You can't do anything else with it. And that would be plus 4 square root of 2. Again, that came from 4 times 2 to get 8. And then 4 times square root of 2 to get 4 square root of 2. On the bottom, you use your difference of 2 squares rule that we just practiced. You have the same quantity but different signs. So square the 2 and get what? And square this to get what? And it's a minus sign, so 4 minus 2 is 2. Now, you can't finish until you check 2 things. 1, is the square root of 2 capable of being broken down? Can you simplify it any further?
Yes, it should be 6 square root of 2 because you have 8 from 4.
No, I'm just talking about the square root of 2.
Oh, I think
Just the square root of 2.
No.
You can't break it down, so you're done with that. Then you look at this. 8, 4, and 2. Is there any number that comes out of 8, 4, and 2 evenly?
2.
2. So you can divide 8 by 2 to get 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. What can we never have in the denominator?
A 1.
1. So your final answer is 4 plus 2 square root of 2. Example number 2. It's 3 over 5 plus the square root of 3. What should I multiply the top and the bottom by?
5 minus square root of 3.
Yes, 5 minus square root of 3 on the top and the bottom. And when I multiply across on the top, I'm distributing this 3 to each of those. So it's 3 times 5 to get 15. You have a minus sign right here. So we're going to put a minus sign there. And then it's 3 times square root of 3. The only thing you can do with that is just write it as 3 square root of 3. On the bottom, you have to use your difference of 2 squares rule. You have the same quantity in essence, but the different signs. So what you do is square 5 to get what?
25.
And square the square root of 3, and you get what?
3.
3. If you square a square root, it's just the number underneath. What's the sign in the middle? Subtraction. What do I get? 22. Now do your checks. Can I break up the square root of 3? 15, 3, and 22. Is there any number that comes out of all three of those? No, you can't. So if that's the case, then you're finished. On the practice problem, you're going to have to multiply the top and the bottom by 4 plus the square root of 7. And when you do that, on the top you end up with 24 plus 6 square root of 7. And on the bottom, you end up with 16 minus 7, which is 9. Now your first check is the square root of 7. You can't break that up. No perfect square goes into it but 1. But 24, 6, and 9 can all be divided by 3. If I divide by 3 there, I get 8. Divide by 3 here to get a 2. And then divide by 3 on the bottom to get 3. For the practice problem, you have to multiply the top and the bottom by 4 minus the square root of 10. And when you do that, you get 32 minus 8 square root of 10 over 16 minus 10, which is 6. Remember, that comes from this squared and this squared. Subtract them. Square root of 10 cannot be simplified, but you can get a number out of 32, 8, and 6. Divide them all by 2 to get 16 minus 4 square root of 10 over 3.
I'm excited.
Answer should have been A. The answer on that one should have been D. Answer on this one should be B. The answer on this one should be A. Example number 3. In this problem, on the top, you have an extra number. You have 2 plus square root of 3 on the top. Your opening movements are still the same. You look at the bottom, and you multiply the top and the bottom by the same expression except the different sign. So 4 plus square root of 2 over 4 plus square root of 2. Now, when you multiply these together, you have to do something a little differently on the top. On the top, you have 2 times 4 to start with. Your first move is 2 times 4, and that's going to be 8. Your next move is still with the 2, but you multiply it by the square root of 2. 2 times the square root of 2 is simply plus 2 square root of 2. Now you're finished with the 2 here. You have to move to the square root of 3 and multiply it by each of those. So square root of 3 times 4 is just plus 4 square root of 3. And then square root of 3 times square root of 2 is square root of 6. Again, here's how we came up with that. 2, you go 2 times 4 to get 8. And then 2 times square root of 2 to get 2 square root of 2. Now move here and do square root of 3 times 4 to get 4 square root of 3. And then square root of 3 times square root of 2 is square root of 6. There. On the bottom half, you just go back to the trick that we did before we started today's lesson, and that is to look at this. That would be a 16 when you square it. That would be a 2 when you square it. 16 minus 2 is 14. Now, you have to go back and look at these now. You have an 8, and then a 2, a 4, and a 1. It's not written, but there's still a 1 there. And then the bottom's a 14. So again, that's 8, 2, 4, 1, 14. There's no number that comes out of those other than 1. So you can't divide anything out. Also, you have square root of 2, square root of 3, and square root of 6. These cannot be simplified. They're all broken down as far as they go. And that's as far as this answer goes right now. Example number 4. On this problem, you would multiply the top and the bottom by 2 minus the square root of 3. And when you do that, on the top, you're multiplying 5 by 2 first to get 10. And then 5 times the square root of 3. Now notice there's a minus sign. So it's going to be minus 5 square root of 3. And then you move over to this. Square root of 6 times 2. It's plus, so square root of 6 times 2 is plus 2 square root of 6. And then this times this, notice there's a minus sign, will give you minus square root of 18. Shavaria, here's one you're going to simplify. You're going to end up simplifying this in a little bit. On the bottom, you go back and use the item that we did before. Now on the bottom, you would have 2 squared, which is 4. And then square root of 3 squared is 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. Now go back and check what you have. 10, 5, 2, and 1. 10, 5, 2, and 1. There's a 1 on the bottom, but it's just going to disappear. There's nothing that goes into 10, 5, 2, and 1 other than 1, so you can't do anything. But down here on the bottom, you're going to rewrite this, keep it the same, except look at this. Can the square root of 18 be broken up? Yes. Into 9 and 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So you would have minus 3 square root of 2 at the back end. That would be your final answer. On the practice problem, you should be multiplying the top and the bottom by 2 minus square root of 2. So on the top, you will get 8 minus 4 square root of 2 minus 2 square root of 3 plus square root of 6. On the bottom, it'll be a 4 minus 2, which is 2. And there's nothing else that can simplify, so that would be the answer.